Thanks and welcome back to Texas Motor Speedway. There's a helmet looking for its owner. Martin Truex Jr. fastest in the first practice to put that on. Jeff Gordon sharing a lap with Danica and getting ready for his Xfinity analyst debut. Clint Boyer straps in. He's ready to go because it's time for Sprint Cup Series final practice. Part of Fast Friday presented by K&N Filters. Well, the ceiling is lifted. It's warmed up nicely. The sun poking through the clouds. 76 degrees. Earlier for the track temp. Now it's 104. The ambient up 8 degrees to 63. Pretty decent day here outside of Fort Worth, Texas.
Dadgum perfect, really.
Well, yes, it is.
Just nice racing weather.
Well, then let's have some final practice.
That's what we're here for. Cars on the track, cars go around, cars go fast. We talk about them.
That's the first half of a Sam Flood parable. Sam's the supervising producer for NBC, which will have the second half of the season. And he says, all right, boys, cars go left, we'll talk about them. Cars go right, we'll show replays and talk about them some more.
And that's our production meeting.
Yep.
We'll be anxious to see what happens in this hour and 20 minutes. Martin Truex Jr., you talked about him. He was quickest in that earlier practice session. This is final practice to get ready for qualifying and the race. We only had about 3 or 4 drivers that actually made a mock qualifying run in that first practice, most notably Kevin Harvick and Casey Mears, that were both well up inside the top of the sheet.
Jeff Gordon, something in blue for Gordon this weekend. It's 20 cars, 22 very quickly out there logging laps. Matt Yoakum.
Mike Gordon has been fast, especially when it comes to trying to chase the pole on 1.5 miles. In fact, 2 poles in his last 3 outings. But during that first practice session, he didn't switch over to qualifying set. They were struggling too much in race setup, so they focused on that. The same focus carries over to this session. Still in race setup, near the end, maybe the last 15 minutes or so, they will swap over. But right now, the biggest problem for Gordon and Alan Gustafson, they cannot connect the corners. They can't make it consistent from entry all the way to exit. Jamie Little?
Well, Matt, Casey Kane's 35th birthday has gotten off to a great start in the only practice session this morning. He was second on the board, and that was all in race setup. They didn't even try qualifying. That is the plan for this final practice of the weekend. They're all taped up, and that's why Casey Kane is standing over my shoulder, watching what's happening, waiting a little longer. They're going to make some qualifying runs, and they will stay like that till the end. Now, keep in mind, Casey has been the most consistent Hendrick driver in the first 6 races this season. He's sitting 5th in points, and the team right now fired up. They said every day should be Casey's birthday. He is fast, and we're hopeful we get that second win here.
Jamie, who else has a birthday this week?
Oh,
like yesterday.
Yes, I guess it's good to be Aries this month.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you know, Mike, you might look at this track and you'd say, okay, what happened in Atlanta? Because always people are talking about, oh, cookie cutter, 1.5 miles, all the same. But this racetrack is a sister track to Atlanta, shaped very similar banking in the turns, but the loads on the car here are totally different than they were at Atlanta. And so you say Jimmy Johnson dominated or won Atlanta, he should be the car to beat here. Not necessarily so. This track is setup-wise a little bit different than what we saw at Atlanta. So forget what happened in Atlanta. Texas, totally different animal.
Now, Joey Logano is fastest so far in this practice. Larry, when you have final practice before qualifying, how is your agenda for this session different than if final practice was, say, tomorrow after qualifying?
Well, obviously, if it was tomorrow after qualifying, your full focus would be on long runs. And that's a bit of a challenge, I think, because to the point about Jeff Gordon, they don't feel like they're in good enough shape in race trim to get over to qualifying trim. My approach, though, would be whatever the case, the final run of this practice would be in qualifying trim because that's the last feel my driver will have before qualifying.
Yeah, and look, Mike, if you're not happy running around here at 29 seconds and the car's not comfortable, you sure don't want to go out there and try to run 28 seconds, pick up a second in a car that's not uncomfortable at this speed. So you've got to keep working on the car at this speed so that you have some confidence when you get ready to go do a qualifying run.
All right, so you'll work up to it as the session goes on.
Work up. And we can just listen to Harv, and if he stays in the gas from the center of the corner off, if he can just stay in the throttle, then he's got his car where he wants it.
One thing I've noticed in this race run, he's not trying to pick the throttle up near as quick as he was in that earlier practice when he made that practice qualifying run.
Notice how
roll a little bit.
Notice how he's rolling out early, just softly out of the throttle, and then he can't get it back wide open quick enough, so he's a little late getting back to the gas, and that's why his lap times are no better than they are.
Harvick's string of top 2 finishes that ended at Martinsville started right here last October. All right, let's compare Kevin Harvick with Brad Keselowski.
Well, by the way, Keselowski's 4th quick, Harvick is 10th quick, so there's a little difference in their speed.
One thing I see with Brad, when he's able to go back to the throttle, he's able to pretty much stay in it.
Yeah, that was a good 3 and 4. He's rolling out early here, as you can hear. 1 and 2 is totally different than 3 and 4. A little bit different in the approach to 1 and 2 than there is to 3 and 4.
Now he just shot past Matt Kenseth, who has shot to the top of the board. 2880, 187.5 miles an hour. Kenseth is fastest. Welcome back to Texas. Matt Kenseth fastest, Ryan Blaney second, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. just pipped into third over Danica Patrick and Joey Logano. There's your Fast Five on Fast Friday, presented by K&N.
Yeah, that 2880 though, man, that's a long way off of the 2698 track record.
But I think it's safe to say, to our point earlier about different agendas, our top 4 drivers that you just saw there ran 1 lap and they were done with a practice qualifying run there.
Kurt Busch now, who has the 7th fastest speed of this session.
Busch.
Oh, 29.73 there, off of 29.01 on his 2nd of 7 laps. And Jamie McMurray, who owns a nice string of top 5. I think 3 in his last 5 appearances have been top 5s on 1.5-mile tracks, including a 5th here at Texas last November. Jimmy Johnson. Let's see what agenda he's on.
Jimmy ran a fair amount of laps in that first practice earlier, 57 laps. So I get a feeling that Jimmy may be in qualifying trim with his 48 car to start this practice.
Okay, he was right down around the bottom in 1 and 2. Matt Kenseth currently quickest with a 2880. That's 187.5. Not anymore. 2877 for Jimmy, and he goes to the top of the chart.
Yeah, Chad Canals, his crew chief, is really big on focusing on one thing during a practice session, if he can possibly make that work.
Casey Kane to 2nd. That's where he ended the earlier practice session with a 28.78, 1/100th of a second off his teammate.
The Henry cars are looking pretty good right now. You got 3 in the top 5. Danica 6.
But I think that right there goes to show you how much grip the track has lost. You remember Jamie's report on Casey being in race trim in the first practice. He ran a 28.35. You know, he's 4/10 slower than that in qualifying trim. That's just grip in the racetrack.
Yeah, it's midday, and this is as hot as the track has been. It's been laying here for an hour since for a lunch break. Yeah, it's lost some speed for sure.
Larry, I know you're a big studier of trends. It is Jimmie Johnson's turn to win, because in the last 5 mile-and-a-half races, Harvick won Charlotte, Jimmie won here. Harvick won Homestead, Miami. Jimmie won Atlanta. Harvick won Las Vegas. It's Jimmie's turn again.
But I think that's the two we're going to be watching tomorrow night when they drop the green flag on this 500-mile race, no question.
Yep, well, good chance of that.
Like I said, Atlanta is very, very similar to this racetrack. There's some minor differences. The loads on the car are a little bit different. I've been told by some of these guys, but setup-wise, pretty close. If you had a good car at Atlanta, I would expect to have a pretty good car here at Texas.
Now, Tony Stewart is our track record holder here at Texas Motor Speedway. He set that record back last fall, but it was in round 2. He did not actually sit on the pole for the race.
Yeah, and Larry, I do think it's interesting that in the first 5 races we went to 5 different size racetracks, and so we're finally back to a mile-and-a-half like we were at Atlanta and Vegas. Getting back to this mile-and-a-half, I think you can take some of those results from the mile-and-a-halves and they would apply here.
Here's some good news for Roush Fenway. There's Greg Biffle up in the top 15 after a lap at 29.09 with what they said is a brand new race car, a new generation of car for them.
Well, and I think he's still in race trim with this 16 car, so that's even a brighter light yet.
It's an hour-and-a-half session, an hour and 5 minutes to go in final practice at Texas. Welcome back to Texas. Jimmie Johnson fastest in Sprint Cup final practice, presented by K&N. Casey Kane, Matt Kenseth, Ryan Blaney, Dale Earnhardt Jr. That's Fast 5. And here's our K&N driver profile. It's on Team Penske. Each of their 2 drivers have a win this year in Sprint Cup, so they're in the chase. Only one finish outside the top 10, and they are the only team, and this is surprising, that has led every race this season.
Yeah, and that finish outside the top 10 was with Brad Keselowski in this 2-car finish, 41st at Daytona. Nothing of their doing. They had an engine failure in that race.
But you got to. This track is interesting because this is a very short back straightaway. It's only 1,330 feet down the back, and so where you really got to generate speed is from the middle of 3 and 4 down to turn 1, because it's a long looping dogleg kind of front straightaway here. That's where you got to generate some speed if you're going to go around this track very fast.
What are the chances we'd have 2 pit reporters on a show and they'd both have a birthday this week? Matt.
Aries is a pretty stellar month, Mike, I think. Well, coming up, looking at the 1 car, in the first session today, he ran a total of 30 laps. He was 7th on the board. They've made some improvements between the sessions, but he went out and fired off a 20 straight lap run just to try to A and B different packages they want to run this session. Now they've swapped over to package number 2. They've topped him off with some Sunoco race fuel and put sticker tires on, but his complaint was similar to the first session. The car was just swinging really loose on exit of the corner deeper into a run. Jamie?
They continue to work on Kevin Harvick's car. In the first practice this morning, he was 3rd on the board, but they weren't happy with it. They kept working on it, felt like they made it a little bit better. So the start of this practice session, they went out on scuff tires, made a 13-lap run, and they continue to work on it. They want to keep it in their race setup to dial it in a little bit better, but they were happy overall with those lap times on scuff tires, Mike.
Thanks, Jamie. Texas, one of 5 racetracks where Kevin Harvick does not have a Sprint Cup win.
And we were talking about similarities in racetrack. You know, Atlanta's banked 24 degrees, Charlotte's banked 24 degrees. This racetrack is banked 24 degrees. But the interesting thing, Atlanta's back straightaway, which I think is pretty short, is only 1,800 feet. Charlotte's is 1,500 feet. Here, though, you're only at 1,330 feet down that back straightaway, so not a lot of time to make a lot happen down the back straightaway here.
That is surprising. I would have thought Atlanta had the shortest backstretch of just about anywhere.
Well, we always talk about Atlanta being a mile of turns and a quarter of a mile of straightaways.
Right.
So I guess that puts it in somewhat perspective.
Ryan Newman, as we mentioned in the first practice session, crew chief Luke Lambert is here. So is the engineer and tire specialist that all were penalized by NASCAR. That is under appeal, and that appeal will be heard next week. So part of the appeal process is that the competitors are allowed to be at the racetrack until that appeal process is completed.
And here's the penalty right here. You can see pretty much crew chief Luke Lambert fined $125,000. He and actually 2 other crew members, it's actually 7 races because it also includes the Sprint All-Star race, a loss of 75 driver and owner points. And next Thursday, before we head to Bristol, that's when the appeal will be heard.
I think this is an important race for that 31 team. If you were not doing anything wrong, and there's no reason for you to be penalized like they are, then you should run as good this weekend as you've been running, because this team has been performing at a pretty high level.
Yes, except for Martinsville.
Except for
which
Martinsville.
was one race after this penalty was handed down.
Yeah, so I think if you're, if you weren't doing anything that you shouldn't have been, you should run just as good here this weekend as you've been running in the past few weekends.
Good point.
And there you can see they actually sat on the outside of the front row at Martinsville, but dropped like a rock when the green flag waved. And this penalty comes from Auto Club Speedway. I don't want to go too technical here, but the fans probably wondering, why in the world would you poke a hole or holes in your tire?
I got in a fight with people wanting to do that.
Now, we're talking about a hole that's 0.010 of an inch, and it can range anywhere from 2 holes to 4 holes. And they're doing it actually in the sidewall. And the reason they're bleeding the air off these tires, these teams know by information that Goodyear gives them, is where do they have the most grip at what air pressure. And they also know where they start getting into a durability issue as far as lowering the air pressure. So if you can bleed air off, that means you don't have to start the tire as low and you don't gain as much air pressure. And when you don't have to start the tire as low, that makes you a lot better on a restart after pretty much you've changed tires.
So we're always looking for performance things to make the racing better. If I could control, or if all these guys could control the buildup in their tires, wouldn't that make racing better?
And I think they're looking at that, DW.
Sure hope so.
There's Dallas. And Patrick's dog. You can get now. She asked people send pictures of your dogs, and we'll put them on the trunk lid because you can buy a stuffed Dallas. It's a plush toy. It's not taxidermy. Okay, it's a plush toy of Dallas. You can buy it at Danica's Souvenir Trailer. It's going to raise money to help animal husbandry, and people send her pictures of their dogs. GoDaddy and Tax Act, who's back on the car after having a good week at Martinsville. They have the trunk lid all set up for doggy photos.
And one of the neatest stories of one of the dogs on that deck lid is a gentleman that served his country over in Afghanistan. When he came back to the United States, one of those dogs, that was his best friend when he got back.
I don't think our dogs are on there. Yours or my daughter's?
No.
Nope. Danica coasting in after a run early in this session. She was
too tight, like getting it in and down. I had to lift all the way out of the throttle to get it down. I think getting back to the throttle initially felt better, but it still was getting a little bit loose later in the corner, but it took away some of it on initial throttle.
She's only run 3 laps in this practice session. Her quickest lap was the first of those 3 laps at a 28.91.
So she is 6th fastest right now. Ricky Stenhouse is 24th with a 29.34 on his first of 12 laps.
It's a clean looking car, isn't it?
Zestfully clean.
Oh, gee.
I like that.
I knew you would. Jamie.
And Brad Keselowski, 12th on the board. He went out and made a 25-lap run on that one set of tires. Was pretty happy with it. Brought it in. Now he's waiting for them to switch it over to the qualifying trim. Brad Keselowski, though, all business this week, and this is one track he's come so close to winning at, and he's come up a bit short. Of course, we can't forget what happened in November in the melee between him and Jeff Gordon and their crews, and he wants to put it behind him and focus on getting the win. And to help him do so, once again, he's running double duty. He'll be in the Xfinity Series race tonight.
And nobody had a better view of what went on in that between Jeff Gordon and Brad Keselowski than Jamie Little. She was right in there amongst them.
Yeah, I liked it, though. That's when I gave Kevin Harvick another nickname, the Instigator.
Oh, yes.
Because he definitely was. I don't know that anything would have ensued if Harvick hadn't pushed Keselowski back into Gordon. What do you think? Because Keselowski was getting ready to walk away.
I think the whole incident was bizarre.
I know, it was
and
funny.
that just added to it.
I thought it was pretty cool.
It'll be on the highlight reel for some time to come.
Yeah. Jeff's had some interesting confrontations here, shall we say.
One on the backstretch
One
a few years ago with Jeff Burton.
Yeah.
Well, I still think that whole deal in October, if the teams hadn't been allowed to pull those side skirts out, I think that dust-up between the two of them would have been a Craven Busch kind of thing, and they might have both gone on and contended for the win.
If all it had been is some body contact,
right,
and Jeff hadn't cut down a tire and spun out,
yep,
I think it would have been maybe a discussion when the race over with, not a fight.
Right. Brett Moffitt 34th in this session. Well, his teammate Clint Boyer 3 spots above him on the board.
Kid had a great run at Atlanta, finished 8th in his car. Kind of got him a ride, you know, after what happened with Brian Vickers. So this is his kind of racetrack.
Now, he's not the... He is the race-to-race replacement for Brian Vickers. I don't think they've really outlined a full schedule for him, but they did enroll Brett Moffitt as a contender for Sunoco Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, even Brett said this week, we're just taking it 1 week at a time. Right. But something he also said, he said, obviously Brian Vickers and Clint Boyer has offered him a lot of advice each week. But he said one driver that has really wrapped his arm around him and talks to him before every practice and every race is Carl Edwards, another one of the Toyota drivers. Wow. And he said, I never had even met Carl until the first time I drove this 55 car.
Jimmy Johnson fastest with 51 minutes to go in final practice. A number of names on the side of Carl Edwards' car. Matt Yoakum explains.
Mike, $1 million sentimental favorite for tomorrow night would have to be Carl Edwards. Now, the names you see on the quarter panels and the fenders and the hood of this number 19 of Carl Edwards are kids from New Jersey to North Dakota. They're battling everything from cancer to third-degree burns, and their names are plastered on this car for tomorrow night. Now, if Edwards wins, his 2 sponsors, Ace and Stanley, will donate $1 million to the Children's Miracle Network. And right now, odds are looking better. Carl said after the last run that he's getting closer and closer to where he needs to be on entry. And the changes they've made, he likes the direction that they are going.
Currently 18th on the board, and that group will donate a minimum of $100,000 regardless of where Carl finishes. So nice initiative there.
Yeah, right now he's 18th quick. Jeff Gordon down here in 20th right now.
We talked about this in the earlier practice. Jeff had 2 awfully good runs here. Of course, we know what happened in the fall race with the situation with Brad Keselowski, but he finished 2nd in this race a year ago. But both of those races, he was leading with less than 10 laps to go. So had 2 solid runs here in Texas in 2014.
Kyle Larson back in the car this weekend after missing Martinsville. And quite honestly, the dehydration is what they finally determined was probably wrong with Kyle. And I've been there. I've done that. Not necessarily before races, but certainly after races, where you were just, I've gotten out of the car before and be dehydrated and pass out. Or I don't know if pass out's the right way or not, but just kind of fall to your knees because you were just so dehydrated.
And Mike, I found it interesting looking at this car yesterday. I became curious what this Axe white label is. And what it is, it's a program designed to give people the coaching and opportunities needed to take the leap and turn aspiration into action. And Kyle has taken a huge interest in this because of what he did with his racing career. He took the leap, and obviously it's worked out for him.
Wow, another great initiative, and there he is up in the Harry Gant groove, which is becoming the Kyle Larson groove.
No, that's his favorite groove.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves to get up next to that wall, right excuse me, ride that cushion.
Saw Sam Hornish a bit ago. Here's his teammate, Eric Almirola. And the Tampa native is 32nd right now in this session. The fastest driver in this session is with Jamie.
And Casey Kane out of the car, but they are not finished for the session. First off, happy birthday, Casey. This seems like the car is pretty well for you. Pretty good.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. So first practice went really well in race trim, and then we wanted just to do qualifying this practice. And we were a lot looser than expected that first run, so we tightened up a little bit the second run. I was still loose, but made a small gain as far as lap time goes. So now we're going to tighten up even more and see where we're at. But I'm really happy with our Great Clip Chevrolet. And the team's prepared and done a really nice job. Hopefully we can be a really good weekend for us.
All right, Casey Kane, 35 years old today. He's #1 on the board right now, Matt.
Jamie, from 1st to 31st, we're going to go down here to the 15 car of Clint Boyer. He's just pulled it back in. On the first session, he complained he just didn't have enough rear grip that he was searching for. This session, he says the car is just snapping loose. It does a wiggling thing, DW. I guess that's driver talk. Trying to explain to Brian Patty exactly what it's doing. He says it's been doing it the entire session. Brian told him to bring the car back in, which he's done. It's now up on the scales, and they're going to try to diagnose what changes they can make to try to fix this issue that he's got on his Toyota.
Yeah, what he's talking about is when the thing probably goes off into turn 1, it does what we call land. The car's kind of light as it goes down into the corner, and as it lands, if it doesn't land with with some pretty good grip in the car, it's going to get that little wiggly loose feeling that he was talking about. So that's something that looks like they're working on, and car looks very similar to what it did at Martinsville last week. He's 31st quick right now, Clint Boyer is, and not happy with the car. They may have to get that magic wand out again and work on that thing.
Well, Jimmy Johnson just ran his fastest lap of the session, 1/1000th back of teammate Casey Kane. Let's send it to Jill Arrington at the Fox Sports 1 news desk and get an update. Big city, big action. And a handful of wheel for Brad Keselowski as he talks it over with Joey Logano. They're both in the top dozen.
Yep. Brad was fighting that thing. Look at him. Got to get a hold of it. Got to grab that wheel. You got to jerk it.
But I'd say why both of these guys are out of their race cars, just kind of chit-chat, and both of them's run a number of laps in this practice, what little bit we've run, but I think they're probably putting both their Ford cars over to qualifying trim, make some qualifying runs here.
And you know what I like about these two guys? I think they genuinely like each other. They're teammates, but I really think they feed off each other. I really think they're good buddies, and I think that's why they have some great success working together.
Is that harder to do the more teammates you have, say in a 3 or a 4 car team?
Well, sure. You just think about going to dinner with two, you and another guy, you and I,
yeah.
And then you and I and Larry, and we throw Andy in, and it's hard to have conversation or kind of one-on-one or buddy up with one or the other. You kind of try to spread it around a little bit. So I think, yeah, I think that's what Roger sees. 2's better than 3 or 4.
Well, that's why Andy always eats alone.
But I can speak with a lot of expertise because
sure.
You two only have 2 kids. I have 3.
Yep.
Trust me, 2's like 2, 3's like 10.
I agree.
That's another way to put it.
But I do think it, when you just got a one-on-one conversation like
yes.
they have, it's a lot easier when you got 3 or 4 guys all wanting to chime in and tell you what you need to, here's what you need to do.
Or if you want to know about 4, go see Jersey Boys.
Oh, yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
The 4 seasons.
Love the music.
Yep.
Matt was talking about the initiative that this race car has on it for Carl Edwards, and then actually earlier this week, Carl visited the Cook's Children's Hospital here in Fort Worth, Texas, and there's going to also be 4 very special children here this weekend as honorary crew members for Carl Edwards and his 19 team.
And I love that little commercial Carl does with the kids, where I don't remember exactly how it goes, but at the end he says, let's all go get some ice cream, I'm driving. Yeah. But Carl is such an engaging guy, and he gets it. I mean, he gets it across the board. You got to be a good race car driver. You got to be a good teammate, and he knows that now. And you got to be a good PR person, and you got to be a good spokesperson for the sport. Carl gets the whole package. I think he has a total package.
But that's something he has said about being a better teammate. He said, when I started at Roush Fenway Racing, I had the best teammate in the world that I could pull from. Matt Kenseth had just won the Sprint Cup Series championship. I didn't look at him as a teammate. I looked at him as another guy I needed to outrun. He said, I totally, 10 years later, I get the concept that I have to come to Joe Gibbs and I have to be a better teammate.
Well, and I think, after talking to Carl, how ironic it is that it was up to Matt. Carl would tell you, if Matt Kenseth said, I don't want Carl Edwards over here, I wouldn't have had the opportunity.
Right.
But Matt said, man, yeah, bring him in. I think it'd be good for our company, good for our teams.
Now add another dimension with one of your teammates sidelined, Kyle Busch, and now you have a new teammate, a substitute, who's in that seat, David Reagan.
But what makes it good about David Reagan, he has been a teammate to Carl Edwards and Matt Kenseth back in the day at Roush Fenway Racing.
But I think it's not all bad, because you think about Adam Stevens, who's the crew chief on this car now. He didn't have a chance to work with Kyle Busch in a Cup car. And then now he's working with David, and so they're learning together almost. And I think David, if you look at where he is in the points, he's right in there with Matt and everybody, all the other Gibbs guys. I think he's done a pretty darn good job of filling in. And I also know, I talked to Kyle last night, and man, he is starting to chomp at the bit. He's starting to get a little antsy. Yep. And he's really, really anxious to get back in this race car.
And a home team for David Reagan's sponsor, Interstate Batteries. Home game for them here in Texas this weekend. Matt?
Mike, Jamie McMurray was 7th fastest in the first session, currently 11th, so you've tried 2 different packages during this session. Have you hit on something you feel pretty comfortable with?
Yeah, we saved 3 sets of stickers for this practice, so we did 2 20-lap runs, both on a set of stickers, and I thought our last setup was really good. What made me happy is I could run the bottom and the top. I think you need to race on the bottom, but it's a hard track to pass on, and when you catch somebody and they're running the bottom, my car earlier, I couldn't make up any ground on the top, so I thought Matt and Josh did a really good job there of giving us a car that you can race on the bottom or the top, and it seems to have good speed initially. It falls off maybe a little too much, but hopefully when the sun goes down, that'll get better.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Now, that's a 2-car team. Chip Ganassi Racing with Felix Sabates, his teammate Kyle Larson. Back after dehydration kept him out of the cockpit for Martinsville.
And you know something that we don't talk a lot about. We talk about the Childress Alliance, but you got to remember something. The 1 and the 42, they have Hendrick power, and it's a very similar alliance as to what you would have if you were with the Childress group. You get engines, you get help. I don't know how much engineering help you get, but I do know you get a lot of help when you run a Hendrick engine in your car.
Kyle Larson, top 10 in both races here last year. Jeff Gordon looking over the data. It's Best of All on Fox Sports 1. Our year-long coverage begins with a doubleheader. Red Sox, Yankees, 12:30 Eastern, and a playoff rematch. Royals, A's, 9 p.m. Eastern time. It's America's home for baseball every Saturday. I'm sorry. You're right. There's a big A there with a halo. That'd be the Angels, not the A's. The A's are those other guys.
That was an A.
In Oakland. Oh, boy. Let's stick to racing. This is me ripping up the promo card
let me see that card.
that I just misread.
Let me see
Royals, Angels. Jamie.
And Joey Logano eagerly waiting to get in his car again. They're swapping over to qualifying trim. You're the defending winner of this race. So how does the feel of this car compare to what you had a year ago?
Pretty close, actually. The Shell Pencil Ford's got good speed in it. I think it showed that early in this practice and race trim. Been able to, seems like it hangs in there and has good front run speed. So I'm excited about it. We're switching over to qualifying trim now, and I'm like antsy. Like I want to get back in this thing and see what she's got in qualifying trim. Should be pretty good, hopefully.
It's always fun to see you guys when you have a fast race car. You're always happy.
Always more fun when it's fast.
That's right, Mike.
Well, he's had a lot to laugh about this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, he got that win at Martinsville in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. He became the 26th driver to have a win in the top 3 series. And he also won in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series. He's only the 3rd driver to have a win in those series as well as the top 3 series.
But think about it. He's won in all 3 series this year. This year.
You're right. He has. Yeah.
Has anybody ever done that before? Yes, I'm told. Okay. But not from Canada. No, that was last show.
No, from Elkin.
Right.
Elkin, Canada.
There is an Elkin, Ontario. It's near St. Catharines. Who knew?
Not us.
That's for sure.
And not him.
In fact, Dan Schutte tells us Kyle Busch won in all 3 series in 1 weekend.
That's right, at Bristol. That's exactly right.
See, now we remember.
Now I remember it well.
Thanks, Schutte.
We gave him a broom. We did it.
We were there.
Yeah.
That's right.
One of the most amazing things I'd ever seen.
J.J. Yaley, he's found a bit of speed. He's up to 35th on the board.
And I don't know if we have mentioned, we have 45 drivers here, so when qualifying's over with later on this afternoon, early evening, 2 drivers will be not making this show.
And 1 driver has not practiced, and that is Trevor Bayne. His number 6 has not been on track yet in this final practice. Casey Mears had a strong run in the first practice session. Right now he is 22nd in this one. He was 11th in the morning practice.
And they went ahead. I mentioned a few drivers that made a practice qualifying run at the end of that first practice. Casey was one of them. Boy, did he ever run up on Tony Stewart in that 14 car in a hurry.
He also spent a lot of time in the first practice way up the top of the racetrack.
See Sam Hornish in that 9 car. Last saw him in California. He had an accident here in California that I think was very upsetting to him. Spotter didn't tell him there was a car on his outside and had some contact, wrecked the car.
Brad Keselowski just went to the top of the chart on his 27th lap, 28.68. And Jamie, Trevor Bayne still in the garage. How come?
Yes, he is. He's actually standing on top of his hauler watching practice. Has yet to hit the track this practice session. I just asked Bob Osborne, his crew chief, what's happening, what's going on? And he looked down at his computer. He said, well, we had about 500 things to change on this car. We think we found something, so they gave me the thumbs up. They are going to make it out for a few laps this practice session.
Yeah, and I mean, they were searching for speed in that first practice because he ran a fair amount of laps, 35 laps, but was only 32nd quickest.
2 Fords in the Fast 5 right now, Brad Keselowski and Ryan Blaney with 28 minutes to go.
AT&T's network now has the nation's strongest 4G LTE signal.
All right, let's have a closer look at practice brought to you by Sprint. Get on the fast track to savings with the Cut Your Bill in Half event. Bring your Verizon or AT&T wireless bill and your current phone to a Sprint store, and they'll cut your rate plan in half. Or switch now at sprint.com/half-price. A.J. Allmendinger, the lone car on the track at this moment. He is 34th right now. Let's check with Matt.
Back in the race car this weekend, Kyle Larson. So, combo question for you. How's the race car, and more importantly, how are you feeling?
I feel fine. The race car is good, too. The Axe White Label Chevy is, that's as good as we've been right there that last run out. So, I'm pretty happy with how much gains we made so far in these 2 practices. Shine and all the guys have been doing a good job. So, I feel like we're close to having a really good, raceable car. Just got to find a little bit more, and we should be okay.
Now, Chip Ganassi, your owner, was joking, saying you needed to eat and drink a little bit better, so you tweeted a picture earlier today of what?
Yeah, I had a chicken wrap and some Powerade earlier, so yeah, he's been getting on me. I tweeted that picture about that pizza that I had the other day, and
it looked very good.
Yeah, it was amazing, and yeah, I don't know if he liked that picture, so I did tweet him that I was eating something healthy.
All right, thank you.
But, Mike, I do think there's a reason we're not seeing very many drivers out on the racetrack right now. What drivers had not flipped over to qualifying trim, that's what's going on now with only about 24 minutes to go in this final practice.
Yeah, in the back of the 6 car, when we were talking about him not being on the track yet, they were pulling fuel out of the fuel cell, going to low fuel and getting the car in the qualifying trim. So it takes a lot, as you well know, Larry, to go from a race setup to a qualifying setup, just in pulling the fuel out and putting the weight in and getting the car balanced.
And I think with the short amount of time now between practice and qualifying, you need to be in qualifying trim when this practice ends, because it's tight getting through inspection as it is if you're in qualifying trim already.
Exactly. Let me ask you a question, and I don't know. And so, is there minimum amount of fuel you have to have in the car?
There is not. You just have to weigh the minimum 3,400 pounds. But remember this, they have to run a little more fuel because it's not like just the one-lap qualifying. You're going to run multiple laps. So the last thing you'd want to do is go out there and run out of fuel in qualifying.
And we haven't. That's why I asked you. We've never had that happen that I know of, but it will one day, I bet you.
Probably.
Cutting it close.
And you're not allowed to add fuel at any time during the qualifying session. Here's Matt Kenseth, 4th fastest on his first lap, which was a 28.80. Now this one's a 29.14 for Matt.
You know what I remember? Funny things you remember. Remember when Ray Abraham and Jeff Gordon ran out of fuel in the All-Star race at Charlotte?
Yeah, yeah.
They were cutting it close, and they ran out of fuel in the All-Star race. I know Ray remembers that.
As Paul Menard jumps to 2nd with a 28.72.
I know Ryan Newman has some top 5 finishes, but as far as the most consistent Richard Childress Chevrolet driver, I would have to say Paul Menard would be that guy. Comes in here 6th in the points, very quiet 6th.
Josh Wise, 34th after 6 laps. And he jumps to 27th with a lap of 29.25. Kevin Harvick comes off the corner. He is 11th right now after 32 laps. And his 15th lap, the quickest so far.
You know, Mike Darrell, we've said so much about his string of top 2 finishes. But if you look at the first 6 races this year, Kevin has led 670 laps in 6 races, and that has only been accomplished by 9 other drivers since 1972. The last driver to do it, his teammate Tony Stewart, who led 685 in the first 6 of 2006.
Car's still not happy though. Hurt him off turn 2 there this last lap before. Had to get out of the throttle a little bit, about right in there, because the car was pushing out. You hear it a little soft right there. Looks like the car is not gripping the front tires like he would like.
And that lap was a 30.01, more than a second slower than his fastest lap. Let's check this time before we go to the garage. From a 30.01 to a 30.26. Going the wrong way for Harvick. Matt?
And Casey Mears, Mike, you mentioned pretty good in the first session, and 3 top 15 finishes coming into Texas this year. This team has really been on a nice, consistent roll.
Yeah, we just picked some up in the off season, and glad to come to Texas and have speed again. We unloaded here in the second session pretty good again. Everybody's doing qualifying runs now, so we're getting ready to do ours and see how we end up. But we use this session to kind of try a different package because we felt like we're pretty decent first practice. So we've bracketed a lot of things, and we have some pretty good ideas. So now we got a lot of contemplating going into tomorrow.
Like so many people, you're passionate about this sport's history and your family's history, and you have a helmet that has a paint scheme that's got a lot of family history and sentimental to you.
Yeah, it was a paint scheme that my uncle Rick ran in '79 at the Speedway, and it was one of the last helmets that he had kind of designed himself. So I thought it'd be fun to do something for my dad and my uncle. Actually, I'm going to do it my dad's helmet as well, but definitely special and kind of fun to celebrate what my family's done over the years.
Sure is passionate to show your family's history, and also one of our family members, Steve Burns, he's on the visor. We're sending him our wishes as well.
Thanks, Matt. All of us thinking of Steve, and a tweet from crew chief Rodney Childers for Steve Burns. And Bristol Motor Speedway, next week's Food City 500 has been somewhat retitled, and it's going to be the Food City 500 honoring Steve Burns, and also cancer initiatives involved there in that retitling. So we'll look forward to that as we think of our friend and colleague.
Burns in his fight is just amazing. Stevie and I went over and visited with he and Karen 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't believe how strong he is, and how much faith he has, and what a fighter he is. Just unbelievable.
Absolutely. 19 minutes to go in this session. Brad Keselowski fastest, Martin Truex and Danica Patrick second and third now.
Yep.
Things changed fast here in Texas. When we left you for break, Brad Keselowski was fastest. Ricky Stenhouse clicked off a lap at 28.65, and now Denny Hamlin at 28.48, 189.5 is the fastest, and we're informed that Jimmy Johnson is now on sticker tires and making his Q run.
What do we like to say, Larry? Business is picking up.
Yes, it is. 16 minutes to go in final practice, and everybody's really getting serious about qualifying a little later on this afternoon.
Jimmy Johnson to the top.
28.34, 190 and a half.
All right, 28.34. Good job.
Jamie?
And Kevin Harvick is still searching around. They're 16th on the board right now. In the first practice this morning, they were way off, and they felt like they found something, went in the right direction. Well, then the start of this practice, they felt like they were really off balance-wise. He just wasn't happy with the car. Well, after that last run, he came in, he said, all right, it's definitely better. It opened up a lot of options for me. So they're going in the right direction, and they have yet to make a qualifying run.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is 14th, and he goes to third with a 28.60.
I just have to chuckle a bit when I just saw, Chad telling Jimmy, nice job. That's
first corner. Did get down in there.
That's Dale Jr. there, but when Jimmy and Chad were having a discussion at Martinsville, it wasn't near that cordial.
No, it was not.
Matt Kenseth trying to move back to the top. 28.80 is his best lap.
And I really think, we've questioned the Toyotas, the performance of them the early part of the year here, but I think the way they ran at California and certainly the way they ran at Martinsville 2 weeks ago, they found the speed they were missing. And right now, Hamlin right up there and Matt not too far behind.
Would you have ever believed, though, Matt Kenseth, that won those 7 or 8 races back in 2013, that he would be sitting on a 50-race winless streak coming in here to Texas?
No way.
Jamie McMurray jumps up to second, 28.47, a little more than a tenth off Jimmy Johnson. That's on his 54th lap of this session, and here's Austin Dillon, who is currently 21st.
Austin, one of a number of drivers doing double duty. He was really fast in both those Xfinity Series practice sessions yesterday.
Saw that back end step out a little bit there in the middle of 3 and 4. That'll take your breath away.
Good jump, though. 8th place, 28.70.
Stayed in it.
One thing these drivers have to think about, Darrell, this is not what we used to do back in the day, because, yeah, you may go out there and make that one lap on a brand new set of Goodyears, but if you're going to keep moving on throughout those rounds, you're going to have to make at least 3 qualifying runs tonight on the same set of tires.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that you run a lot of laps, is to see how much fall off you've got and what kind of adjustments can I make to kind of compromise between that really good fast lap and a consistent lap.
Surprise, surprise. Alex Bowman, 5th.
And you know what's impressive about that? It's not like he's in
everything, Larry.
But it's not like he's in qualifying trim and a bunch of other drivers are still in race trim. He's beat a bunch of drivers that's already in qualifying trim.
Well, he has 2 poles here in the Xfinity Series. Nice run. Here's a closer look at the Sprint Cup Series, brought to you by Sprint. Get on the fast track to savings with the Cut Your Bill in Half event. Bring your Verizon or AT&T wireless bill and your current phone. Or cut your rate plan in half at a Sprint store or at Sprint.com. 10 minutes to go. Here's your Fast Five, led by birthday boy Casey Kane.
Keep getting quicker, Larry. We're up to 28 to 27. Still a long way from 26.98, but gaining speed.
All right. 44 of 44 drivers have been on track. The one who has not is with Jamie.
Well, Trevor Bain's crew chief had told me he had about 400 things to change before you guys could get out, but you actually had a problem. What was it?
Yeah, we did. The first run we went out, we were going to be in race trim for this practice, and the engine cut off. So I coasted into the garage, and we went through everything from spark plugs to ignition switches, and finally they had to change the entire wiring harness in the car. So took a lot longer than we wanted. I just hope I get one lap here in this Advocare Ford. Seems like our teammates are a little better in qualifying trim than we've been the last few weeks. So small gains, but we'll keep working on it. And I just want to say thanks to all the people around Fenway that have been working so hard, because this has been a tough season so far. But our guys are putting in a tough effort, and say thanks to Advocare for hanging in there with us. We're going to get it figured out. It's just a matter of when.
He said he feels like they're a little bit better, and they're going to go out and try to make a qualifying run before the end of practice.
Thanks, Jamie. Kyle Larson jumps to 10th and Jeff Gordon to 18th.
Yeah, Jeff Gordon just does not seem to have the speed that his other three Chevrolet Hendrick drivers have, because right now Kane, Johnson, and Earnhardt Jr. all in the top 5, and Jeff Gordon all the way back in 18th.
Well, I know he's going to do the Xfinity race here later on this evening, but Jeff this morning said he wasn't feeling all that great, so I'm not sure that has anything to do with the performance of the car, but not up to 100%. He isn't.
No, it sounds like a head cold.
Yeah, it just
as he sat in the meeting with us. Yep.
But yeah, back to Jamie's interview with Trevor Bayne. 8 minutes to go. They're going to have to really hustle if he's going to get a lap in this practice session.
Paul Menard back out for another run. He is 15th right now.
Paul set on the pole here for the Xfinity Series back in 2012.
Danica Patrick, who is 15th, or 14th rather, also on track. So is Kevin Harvick, who's back in 25th. Here's Menard, and he jumps to 10th, 28.69.
Larry, do you know his crew chief, Justin Alexander? You know him?
Well, yeah, I've talked to him. He was an engineer there. He actually took over about 4 or 5 races before the 2014 season ended. Good guy.
Danica Patrick jumps to 9th with that lap and with all those doggies on the trunk lid. Matt.
Carl Edwards, they're done for the day before qualifying. So you've got about 1 million reasons plus to have a great night tomorrow night in a special paint scheme.
Yeah, it's huge. Ace Hardware Foundation and Stanley presented $100,000 to the Children's Miracle Network this morning. If we win, Stanley's donating $1 million. So $1 million check will go if we get to victory lane. So we want to get this Toyota up to speed. We stayed in race trim. We're going to go ahead and take, gamble on qualifying tonight, but we feel like we've got a good balance. We don't have a ton of speed, but the car drives really well, so hopefully it's good for tomorrow.
Thank you, Carl.
So now 2 single car teams in the top 10. Casey Mears jumps to 5th, Alex Bowman 8th. Here's Joey Logano, who is currently 20th.
'22 car looked pretty fast around 3 and 4 there.
Missed improving by 3/100ths, that is.
Yeah, because this is actually his second run in qualifying trim. So, yeah, looking for a little speed in that 22 car.
Justin Allgaier up into the top 15 in 14th, and here's Greg Biffle in 18th. Ryan Newman jumps to 9th with 6 minutes to go in final practice. 3.5 minutes to go as Joey Logano debriefs. He is now 24th in this practice session. The fastest Ford is Ryan Blaney, who just jumped into 6th behind 4 Chevrolets and Denny Hamlin's Toyota. Here's your Fast 5 as we get down to the final 3 minutes of this session.
2 drivers I see there, they've really shown a lot of speed here all day long. That's Casey Kane in that 5, and the other Casey with a C, Casey Mears in that 13. Both of them been fast both practice sessions.
A little 21 car's been pretty good too with Ryan Blaney. That sucker is that right 6th quick right now. That's been a pretty fast car. Hamlin right now is 4th quick. He's on a run. Got back in the throttle good there, staying in it. Had to lift a little bit right in the middle of that corner.
His best lap of 28.48. This one a 28.65.
Boy, Larry, one thing I can say though, incredible amounts of fall off from one run to the next,
which we all know that's actually going to add to the racing. It'll be better racing because of that tomorrow night.
I mean, like 2 seconds. Yep. You go out running at 28s, next thing you know, you're running high 29s, 30s.
Well, Trevor Bayne's going to get his wish and get to make a couple of laps here in these final 2 minutes. This is his first run in this final practice session.
And I have to believe they went ahead and put it in full qualifying trim, considering he's only going to get a couple laps.
Yeah, that's what I think they were doing when we interviewed him there. You saw with the fuel removing fuel out of the fuel cell, so I'm pretty sure that's what they were doing.
His teammate Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is 11th in that 17 car right now.
And Martin Truex 17th, trying to improve on that.
Blaine 20th on that lap. That's not too bad.
Jimmy Johnson out there, Kurt Busch as well. Stenhouse, Larson. Final minute and a half of this session. Truex did not improve his time. That was a 75. And here's Johnson, who is currently second quickest with a 28:34. That's a 64.
I wonder if they went out the second time, you know, on the same tires, just to see what they would be able to do in all three as we went through the sessions.
Yeah, I have to believe they did.
Kyle Larson ran his quickest lap. And Jamie McMurray trying to finish up here in this final minute. And no one among the drivers who just went out in the last minute or so was able to improve their time.
Daryl, I think you saw the same thing I saw in the backstretch, and I think it involved this 55
it
car.
Did, the 48 and the 55. The 48 had made his qualifying run. He was coasting off a 2 over there pretty high, and Moffitt, I'm not sure he knew where Jimmy Johnson was headed.
And he had to abort his lap there because he just had started a lap.
Watch this. I think we got to look at it. Here's the 48 up high, going slow. And I think Jimmy was going to start to go down, and all of a sudden the 55 was there. Wow, that was a lot closer in real time, and it looked there, I can tell you.
So, yeah, Brett will not even get to make that final run because he pretty much aborted it. As we're about to see the red and the black flag on this final practice session.
Flags are flying.
Matt Kenseth will come across. He'll be the last driver to complete a lap in this session. 30:22 for Matt. And Casey Kane is fastest in final practice. Chevrolet takes the first 3 spots and 4 of the top 5. In Kansas for the second annual Sprint Cup Series night race at Kansas Speedway. It is Saturday night, May 9th. There is the website where you can go and reserve your tickets today. Final practice is over. Remember, qualifying coming up at 6:30 Eastern time. Some new names up there in that top 10. Single car teams like Casey Mears and Alex Bowman.
That's interesting right there. Different guys at top guy. Casey Mears 5th.
Oh, and Ryan Blaney.
Ryan
Blaney,
Blaney,
single car
6th,
team.
Yeah, and there's Bowman, the showman, right there in the 9th. Wow.
I tell you, for only getting 1 run, that's not bad. Trevor Bayne being 20th in that 6 car.
Now, a lot of drivers back from here on back, it appears, just made race runs. Maybe didn't make mock qualifying runs.
Well, we know for a fact that's the situation with Kevin Harvick in that 4 car because he made his practice qualifying run at the end of the first practice.
And that's the danger zone where some of those fellows might be headed home today. We'll find out at 6:30 Eastern time when we qualify. Let's meet the showman. Here's Matt.
Alex Bowman, 9th on the board at the end of this practice. So confidence has to be through the roof for qualifying coming up tonight.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about all the guys at TBR. It's really cool to have Excel Construction on. It's their first race with us this year, and to be up the board says a lot about our Chevrolet. You know, we're a small team. We're all working hard. Tommy and Bono and all the guys have built a really good small race team, but hopefully we can be somewhere around there for qualifying. You know, this place is going to change a lot with the temperature that's going to change and all that, but just happy to be here. I love this place and just want to say hey to Steve Burns at home, and we're thinking about you and praying for you.
We definitely back that up as well. And Mike, he knows all about speed here. 2 Xfinity poles here at the Texas Motor Speedway for the showman.
Yeah, and his best career start in the Sprint Cup Series was 14th last fall at Talladega.
Impressive effort in final practice for Alex Bowman, one of 3 single car teams represented in the top 10 practice speeds. Birthday boy Casey Kane blows out the candles on his cake. 35 of them. He's fastest. 3 things you need to know from final practice at Texas. Hendrick Chevrolet's 1st, 2nd, and 7th. Casey Jones, you better watch your speed. Mears and Kane, top 5 in both practice sessions. And 3 single car teams in the top 10. Mears, Blaney, and Bowman. Jamie?
And Austin Dillon pulling double duty this weekend. About to run over to the Xfinity Garage for qualifying coming up. But you're 18th on the board over here, and you seem pretty happy. How was the car?
Yeah, we had a really good first practice, solid second practice also. Just working a little bit on qualifying trim, man. A lot's a little here. I mean, it's fun to be over here and having a fast car. We worked pretty hard to make sure our fall off was good, and it seemed all right. And just looking forward to tomorrow night. I think a lot's going to change from now until then as the sun goes down and the temperature changes. So proud of these guys and looking forward to tomorrow night.
All right, Austin Dillon. Watch out for him tonight as well, Mike.
Thanks, Jamie. Busy weekend for a lot of drivers, a lot of double dippers in the Xfinity Series and the Sprint Cup Series. NASCAR Race Hub coming up next on Fast Friday, presented by K&N. Then Xfinity Series qualifying. We'll be back with Sprint Cup qualifying at 6:30 Eastern. And tonight's Xfinity Series race presented by Can-Am, 8 p.m. Eastern. Adam Alexander, Michael Waltrip, and the new kid on the block. We can say that again, even though he's the old kid in Cup. Jeff Gordon.
Jeff Gordon, yeah.
He's the new guy in the booth.
Dale Jr.'s in the race tonight. Should be an exciting race to watch.
You saw that 22 car, Brad Keselowski, being pushed to pit road. Won the race here in the fall in the Xfinity Series. Never won here in the Sprint Cup Series, though.
That's what some people will need when we get ready to leave here tomorrow night.
That's Dale Jr.'s ride for tonight.
Where he not only got his first Sprint Cup Series win, but he got his first Xfinity Series win.
That's right. He's hoping to give the rest of the field a headache tonight.
Got it.
And Series champ Chase Elliott ready to go for qualifying. That's coming up shortly, right after NASCAR Race Hub.